We have no first reading. Next block is citizens' comment. Please state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Mark Welch. I reside at 5879 Alness Drive in Westchester. At the March 12th trustee meeting, there was a discussion regarding a bike hike path connecting Beckett Ridge Boulevard with Route 747 and beyond. In this discussion, Trustee George Lang opposed the taking of federal money for the construction of the path, which has an estimated price tag of about $300,000, 80% of which would be paid by a federal grant. Mr. Lang mentioned that the path was not part of the core competency of our local government, that maintaining the path would ultimately be more expensive, the township money would be better spent on infrastructure and services like police and firemen, and that the taking of the money was part of the Agenda 21 program. I believe every fiscally responsible citizen of Westchester will agree with Mr. Lang's position. Why? Why will they agree? Because responsible citizens intuitively understand you can't live beyond your means. When Westchester Township accepts federal money in any form, in this instance for a grant for a bike path, we are surrendering our local control and management of township finances to another power. In a word, it's lazy. If the township doesn't have the money to finance, construct, and maintain a project, even though the project sounds good and may have some benefits, then the township should not be taking money from outside sources to make it happen. Westchester Township needs to live and operate within its budget, just as every citizen of Westchester has to live within their personal budget. Unfortunately, the taking of federal grant money for this project is supported by both Trustees Wong and Stoker. To accept grant money from the federal government is both reckless and foolish because in the taking of the money, we've become part of the problem that plagues our society today, overspending. Ms. Stoker said that, and I quote, "As far as this adding to the national debt, whether or not we receive part of the money to build the sidewalk, it's going to be spent in some community." Mr. Wong even used the word vital to describe the need of this path. Shame on you. There is no reasonable nor rational justification to accept money to construct this non-vital, unessential walking path. Arguments made about reduced use of fossil fuel, supporting local business, generating new business, enhancing our way of life, reduce pollution, the rising cost of gas, and that we as a people need to exercise more and learn to use other means of transportation is poppycock. Just like in the movie Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner, there's an element of build it and they will come. I have flashbacks to when Mr. Wong and Ms. Stoker voted to put a $5,000 crosswalk in an Eagle Ridge in Eaglet, but I digress. One last point. Mr. Lang also mentioned Agenda 21. For clarification purposes, Agenda 21 is not a Westchester Township initiative, plan, or project. Agenda 21 is a global action plan of the United Nations with regard to sustainable development. First devised in 1992, it is an action agenda for the UN, other multilateral organizations, and individual governments around the world that can be executed at local, national, and global levels. The 21 in Agenda 21 refers to the 21st century. From the UN website, Agenda 21 is a comprehensive plan of action to be taken globally, nationally, and locally by organizations of the United Nations system, governments, and major groups in every area in which human beings impact the environment. You know, your carbon footprint and such. In so many words, the United Nations seeks to co-opt and control via individual government privately held land under the auspices of ensuring its sustainability. Worse still, the UN's Agenda 21 has even laid out plans for depopulation, or rather, population control. Those who oppose Agenda 21 say that it is a well-constructed plan by the United Nations to eventually deprive all individuals of their sovereign property rights. Suffice to say that anyone who is interested in learning more about Agenda 21, and we all should, can find much information on the internet. As for me, if the United Nations is going this way, I'm going that way. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Mark Morris. I live at 8876 Eagle View Drive. It's actually located in Beckett Ridge. The reason why I came tonight is to talk about the walking path that was brought up at the last meeting. As some people, and I'm sure maybe some of the township trustees don't even realize, the walking path that goes from Eagle Ridge Drive to Beckett Road is maintained by the homeowners of Beckett Ridge. So if we are going to put in a path that's going to connect that and take it all the way down to 747, what I would like to know is who is going to take over the maintenance of a private path that now exists. The homeowners of Beckett Ridge pay an annual homeowner's fee to maintain that walking path. With the recent addition of the sidewalks in front of the school, which, in my opinion, was a needed thing, it has created more traffic coming from two other homeowner associations that do not pay to maintain that path. So the big question I have is whether or not you do the path is going to be up to you. But I want to know for the homeowners at Beckett Ridge, who then will take over the maintenance of the path that runs between Eagle Ridge and Beckett Road along Beckett Ridge Boulevard. Because I don't believe that many people in the township realize that we pay to maintain that path. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Clark, 7392 St. Ives Place. Hadn't planned on speaking tonight, so unfortunately I'll do my best not to ramble. First of all, Mr. Wong, last meeting you apologized to Mr. Lang. Thank you for that. So, bike path and debt and federal funds and local funds, 80% federal, 20% township, 100% mine. I have to pay for it all. Add to that the fact that I think the service our debt is currently about 10, 12 cents on the dollar. Not really sure about that number. I haven't, like I said, I didn't do my due diligence before I came. I think by 2018 it's expected to be 18 or 20 cents. I have no expectation that our federal government is going to rein that in. The way our federal government works, they push it up to the last minute, and then it's a crisis, and sometimes they extend out the crisis. They push it further down the road, kick the can down the road is what they like to say, or they don't. But I have no illusions that our federal government is going to fix our current situation. So what I feel we have to do is we have to start here. And we do have to say no to federal funds. The fact that federal funds are there, and we say, well, because they're there, we must take them, is kind of ridiculous, actually. Comparing it to the federal highway system, I don't think is very fair. That's a federal program started in the 50s. It encourages interstate commerce. I don't see our bike path doing interstate commerce. I really don't see it having a real big effect on that. I could be wrong. Somebody can correct me if they like. But the idea that everybody's so casual about this federal debt, that is what has created the debt where it is. It's what's going to create this problem that's going to be insurmountable in the future. Cyprus, we're hearing all the news about Cyprus and how they're confiscating, I think, 30%, something like 30% of everyone's savings account, over 130 euros. So 130,000 euros, they just take, 30% of anything above 130,000 euros. Now, the difference between Cyprus and the United States is Cyprus can't print money. The United States can print money. We call this quantitative easing. I found that term, quantitative easing. It makes it sound so nice. But our dollars, the ones that we have in our pocket right now, each day are worth less if we do nothing. There are only a few ways that we get rid of the debt. We tax people, spend the money to pay off the debt. We permit inflation. We sort of inflate our way out of the debt, which is what the quantitative easing is all about. Okay? We reduce the debt, not because we've made it smaller, but because we made all the other dollars bigger. We pay $20 a gallon for milk, and minimum wage is $30 an hour. We do all of those things so the debt doesn't look quite so big. This is a problem. It's a problem that needs to be taken care of daily with the small decisions. Not necessarily with the big decisions at Washington, but with each of the small decisions that you make here and they make over in Mason. And by the way, I've lived in Westchester, Mason area since 1963. I love bike paths. I worked in China for a while. I bicycle, man. I went everywhere on my bicycle. There are plenty of bike paths around here. There's one that runs from Newtown up to, I think it's Springfield. I've only made it to Xenia before I'm winded. But I believe it goes all the way to Springfield. We have bike paths. We have lots of ways we can go and enjoy this area. I throw the bikes in the back of the Jeep and I go. I love bike paths. I like them here in Westchester. But there are bigger pictures here. And just to take money because it's there doesn't really acknowledge where that money's coming from. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Potts. Mr. Roman, for the second time.
Carl Ruhlman, 8285 Vental. I'd like to state a few points that I wasn't able to get in my 2 minutes. First of all, Warren County has been very successful in refusing unfunded mandates. They resist them. But Mark Welch described the Agenda 21 things quite accurately. There are a number of sites on the web, and I'd like to read a quote from one of them that I think is appropriate. Agenda 21 is, quote, to inventory and control all land, all water, all minerals, all plants, all animals, all construction, all means of production, all energy, all education, all information, and all human beings in the world, unquote. That quote is from a site, www.democratsagainstUNagenda21.com. And we have locally the Manor Drive problem, which you eliminated the parking on Manor Drive so that they could use the walkway that somehow years ago the township put in between two residences so students could walk from Manor Drive to Hopewell. Well, you've eliminated the parking, but that township mandated walkway is in poor shape. Now, who's going to maintain it? Increased spending by a government, any government, increases our children's debt. And either land is taken with eminent domain or through easements, the value of the land is reduced. That's an opinion, but I think it's on firm ground. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Ann Becker. I reside at 7510 Cincinnati Dayton Road in Westchester, Ohio. I'm the mother of 3 little kids, and we live on a busy road, Cincinnati Dayton Road. And I have to say to the trustees that I'm extremely disappointed in your choice to pursue the federal money for the biking and walking trails. One of the reasons I'm disappointed is because our current federal debt is $16.7 trillion. The 5 of you sitting before me each owe someone else $53,000 each. And you want us to take more of that money away from my children who have not even earned it yet. The reason we have this debt is because people like us keep getting in line for it. We want more. We want more. We can't afford more anymore. This project is not vital. We're not building an orphanage. We're not helping people who are drug dependent. We're doing a frivolous task of building a bike trail. I'm disappointed in my township today. Please don't pursue this grant. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Becker. Okay. We move down to the next item, discussion.
My name is Jason Coslow. I live at 4604 Coles Court. I apologize, I wear a suit every day to work, but I didn't anticipate speaking today. I wanted to say a couple words about quantitative easing. It's a very complicated topic, but I'm a financial planner by trade, so I deal with it every day. I've had to become a part-time economist just to convey the effects of it to my clients. And when I sit in front of them and tell them that today you spend $3.70 for gas, but at 18 years you're going to spend $7 or $8, and your kid's college education is going to cost $200,000 plus, they look at me like I'm crazy. And I recount to them prices that I have in my book that I carry with me and what they were in the 70s and 60s. And they're like, wow, you're totally right. Yeah, I'm right. That's what happens when you print $85 billion a month. And that's the only way that we can pay our federal debt right now is through printing currency, devaluing the currency. And I can't remember who it was that spoke before. They said it all starts at home. And it does. If we don't push back to the federal government by electing leaders who are going to make good decisions with our dollars at home and push back against the federal government, send better people to Washington than we currently have, Ann's kids are going to have a terrible life. If you don't understand that, look at what you paid 20, 30 years ago for a house, for a car. Houses in Westchester in 18 years, everything doubles about in 18 years, are going to be between $400,000 and $600,000 for a basic 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. If you can't understand that and see that we're saddling our kids with this massive debt, if you want to build bike paths, great. Do it out of our property taxes that we pay every single day. Just don't take the money from the federal government. Push back like Mason does. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, Mrs. Boyko, discussion items and trustee comments.
I have listed for the board's consideration the OKI Transportation and Alternative Program funding source. At the March 12, 2013 board's regular meeting, I did introduce this program from the Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana Regional Council of Governments and the Transportation Alternative Program. It is a federal grant program funding bicycle and pedestrian facilities, traffic calming, and environmentals related to road projects. My purpose in bringing it to the board's attention is to disclose that we have not been actively seeking grant funding for any of the capital improvement projects for the 2013 schedule and beyond. However, this did surface, and I wanted to at least bring it to the board's attention for your consideration as a potential funding source for a capital improvement plan, namely the Smith Road Connector, which is part of the 2013 capital improvement program. The board's choices are to not build the project. There are many capital improvement plan recommendations that are presented as part of your operational budget that you do not fulfill in any calendar year. So this is not something that you must build, but it is something that you can consider to build. You could not build the project. You could build the project and apply for the OKI Transportation Alternative Program funding source, which is a 80% payment, 20% minimum, 20% local match. Or you can build the project and utilize existing township resources, namely this is an eligible expense for tax increment financing and or part of your connections fund, which you all did earmark several years ago for connections path, construction and maintenance of those paths. So just to kind of give you a summary from where we were last meeting to this meeting is the Smith Road Connector, as I indicated last month, will link 3 multifamily developments on the south side of Beckett and Smith Road, and by crossing the traffic light, you can see this particular map system. For those of you that are not familiar with the aerial maps and the township's boundaries, you can see probably the most prominent is the aqua green that is along the center. That is the Beckett Ridge Boulevard private path that a resident did speak to, and This particular path is the mustard yellow and the bright yellow as it continues from Beckett Ridge Boulevard west along the north side of Smith Road to State Route 747, and then across from State Route 747, across State Route 747 in the general vicinity to about the Sipsey Climb, where an existing private path is currently located. This 0.67 mile stretch would connect those two private paths into the public path. This township or this public project of the 0.67 Smith Road connector would not change or alter the maintenance schedule of the private paths, which are the responsibility of those private HOAs or developments. So that would not change that at all. Continuing, as you see bounded, are in the blue and then also in the purple are approximately 5,000 homes. Again, as I presented at the last meeting, it just provides a choice. It does not necessarily mean or does not necessarily logically mean that any resident would use this path to patron some of the commercial development, not only at the Central Business District, but also along the 747 corridor. So again, just a presentation of those numbers. The township's 2013 capital improvement plan identifies, as I said, tax increment financing as an eligible source of funding, and the capital improvement plan estimates the project right about $300,000. Since the introduction of this topic at the board's last meeting, where a majority voiced interest to explore and to pursue the grant, staff solicited an updated cost estimate from the Butler County Engineer's Office, and in today's dollars, the BCO has estimated that project costs for a 10-foot wide multi-purpose path or sidewalk, or a combination of the two, which would be constructed with concrete, which is your most costly material, today's dollars is about $387,000. So should the board decide to pursue this grant, the grant application would be for project costs at $387,000 with a minimum local match of $20,000, which is about $78,000. Another revenue source, as I mentioned, maybe the Connections Fund. As I indicated, the board did establish the Connections Fund several years ago, where you earmarked receipts from the Butler County Solid Waste District's recycling program based on tonnage recycled. The township does receive a incentive, I guess for lack of a better term, for that recycling collection. And the Connections Fund has about $100,000 balance, and that's from accumulating several years' worth of receipts. Annually, again, it's just based on tonnage, so the numbers could be cyclical, but on average, we receive about $22,500 into that Connections Fund based on those recycling receipts. The Connections Fund has been utilized mostly for about $13,000 in 2010. The board did, and I apologize, I don't remember the position of the entire board, but the board did apply for the Community Development Block Grant Program to build a sidewalk along Fountains Boulevard, which linked residential multifamily to the Cincinnati-Dayton Road corridor retail, generally the Highland Square development. And our match with that project was about $13,000. So that was paid out of the Connections Fund as well. And in some instances, we use the Connections Funds for current annual maintenance costs for the Port Union Bike Trail and the Beckett Path along the hillside leading to the Mulhauser Barn. Based on collected industry data, based on other communities' experience and the township's own experience, we did do some research to determine our annual maintenance costs for our existing 2.97 miles of public pathway, namely the Port Union Bike Trail and the Beckett Path that's along the hillside of Beckett Road. And generally, those sources indicate about $1,000 to $1,500 per year maintenance cost. Again, that is dependent upon the materials and also the age, the stabilization of that. But based on our own personal experience, it's about $1,000 to $1,500 per year for the annual maintenance. We calculated that by over the last 5 years, since 2005, where we've had both paths implemented, about $8,000 since 2005, which is average about slightly over $1,000 a year. And maintenance costs for the Smith Road connector, should the Board of Trustees proceed with this project in any fashion, maintenance could be assigned to the Connections Fund as well. Just a couple of last-minute things I wanted to bring to your attention based on questions the board had is the eligible funding is for the construction project. In order to be eligible for any kind of funding source, must be built in public right-of-way and or public easement, meaning the property owner must grant easement for this purpose, but it cannot be constructed on private property and the funding source, the grant funding source be utilized. The Butler County Engineer's Office has agreed to cover the cost for the preliminary engineering, environmental, and the final construction drawings. And the applications are based on the evaluation process, and it's a measurement. You get a point system. Any additional points are granted for a local match larger than 20%, but that's, again, at the board's discretion. And if the board so directs, or a majority of the board directs, the application would need to be a business item at your April 9th meeting so that it can be submitted timely for the April 12th deadline.
Yes.
Yes. Years ago, a rather larger number of citizens came to us and asked us to form a plan for hiking, biking paths throughout the township. They were very much interested in not only developing and enhancing our own biking, sidewalk, intermodal transportation abilities, but also to connect them to surrounding communities, surrounding plans. And we have worked assiduously on that. And we put out a plan for connections. Can you explain how this particular connection, whether or not this is meets some of the connections plan that we developed with our Residents Connection Committee?
If I'm understanding your question, you're asking, is this proposed
with our master plan for bike paths?
Yes, it does. I mean, staff would not schedule for the capital improvement something that's not consistent with the development guidelines and policies or plans that the board, that the township has adopted.
And basically it would join two major hiking, biking paths, the Beckett Ridge and the one is it the Villages of Beckett? What is the name of that?
Villages of Westchester?
Villages of Westchester, thank you.
It does link those two private paths.
And this was the Connections Plan Committee that was from the residents of Westchester that put together this plan.
The Connections Plan, yes, is part of, or is composed of residents of Westchester or business owners, but I believe most all residents of Westchester.
Okay. And that was done many years ago.
I believe the board adopted that plan, I want to say in 2009.
Okay.
I apologize, I don't have an exact date.
Approximately. There are also some issues which were raised, and I think it would be appropriate for us to reassure some people. For example, I know of no intent on the part of any member of the board to use eminent domain for a bike path. I know of no interest in, and I have personally expressed no interest in going forward with this or any other plan if the people whose property were affected objected to it. We had a recent situation where we offered to put some sidewalks along Dimmick Road at the near the intersection of 42 to kind of help enhance the access to the businesses on 42. The property owners who would have been affected had the bike path put on it said they didn't want it. So we said, okay, we didn't put it on. We are very much, as a board, I believe we have lots of different interests. Those who regularly either attend our meetings like Carl Rollman or watch the videos will see us regularly get into spirited and candid debate over many issues. But we all have I believe, the best interests of the township at heart. And we're trying to work with the resources we have in order to provide the services that this township needs, both as residents and as businesses, to thrive. A number of people spoke and expressed the same concerns that we as individual, I think, citizens have with respect to the debt that's being incurred on a federal level. I would like to reassure everybody here that this is not the picture of Westchester's finances. Westchester does not enter into projects that it cannot afford. Westchester, there is not a township, city, county in the state that has a better financial rating than the township of Westchester, because we have striven, as long as I've been a trustee, as long as any of us have been trustees, and that covers quite a few years, to always, we pay our debts, we have reserves, we are constantly looking for ways to, as you heard the discussion tonight, provide services as cost effectively as we can. We do not just throw out money irrespective of what benefit it is to the township. We do not throw out money in such a manner as to jeopardize the financial well-being of this township. I believe we have done everything possible we can to ensure that this township will thrive, while a lot of other townships and cities are still reeling under the economic downturn. Unemployment in Westchester, what was the last 4.5% unemployment rate? 4.6% here. Last year, we brought in more new business than, was it 2011? We brought in more business in all of Warren County, just in Westchester. We constantly are working for ways to help residents, to help businesses, to ensure that we all thrive. So for those that think that we see Washington as the model for our fiscal behavior, we see it as a model for everything we don't want to do here in Westchester. We strive very hard to maintain an appropriate financial approach, keeping in mind we can't provide everything to everybody, but we're certainly doing our best to provide the services that people need. Mr. Lying and I in particular don't always agree on what is our core competencies, or what I like to call essential services. But we have frank and, like I say, candid discussions, and I think we, all of us, come out at the end of the road with projects, with an approach to our financial well-being, which is in our best interest.
I would agree with one thing Ms. Stoker said. I do believe she has the township's best interest at heart. We just have a different perception of sometimes of what the township's best interest is, but I do believe your motives are pure from your perspective. Judy, one question. Of the proposed strip, is any of that on private property?
The engineer, we only have preliminary design. Not even that's even probably too formal of a word. There's only been a conceptual layout. It's been determined that the majority of it probably could be handled within the right-of-way, but if not, we would have to be granted easement by those property owners because it cannot be on private property and still be eligible for funding. Sorry, one thing that you, Trustee Lang, that you did ask last meeting, and I failed to reiterate it this evening, is that even though the application due date is April 12th, the award verbally would be by May, June of 2013, but the funding source does not become available until July of 2014 or July of 2015, depending on where an approved application would fall on the OKI award schedule. So even if you decided to pursue this, even if you were awarded, you could not start construction with these monies until it's awarded either July 2014 or July 2015. So it still could be potentially a year or 2 years before construction could commence if you pursue this source.
My understanding is also we could pursue gathering more information and change our mind later. We are not hardwired into.
Yeah, that gives me a small level of assurance, and I do appreciate that. As elected officials, I believe it's our obligation to tell the federal government they have to stop. We cannot continue on the road we're on. It's an unsustainable road, and you can look at any ancient government, look at Rome, look what's going on in Europe today. What we are doing today is unsustainable, and it has to stop. And one way we can tell the federal government to stop is by not accepting their bribes. And that's kind of how I look at this. Just because someone else is taking borrowed money that eventually will go back to someone else, we shouldn't, and we're worried that that might haunt us. That doesn't make what we're doing right. My opinion on this hasn't changed since last week, and that is, the last meeting. I still see this as an Agenda 21 program. Walk paths are not a core competency. Even though this is administered by OKI, this is a federal grant. The federal government currently borrows 40 cents of every dollar, and it's unsustainable. Young kids here today, you have over $50,000 that you owe. How does that make you feel? Don't worry about it. I feel the same way. And this, we're passing this debt on to our children. And this grant will only cover the construction, and over the life of the asset, that's a very small portion of the total cost. Ms. Boyko shared some numbers today about maintenance. For 2.97 miles, we're running about $1,500 a year. But those assumptions, those numbers are flawed, because at the last meeting, she said the serious maintenance doesn't start until 12 to 15 years down the road when you have to resurface or look at replacing it. So these numbers that we're looking at are looking at numbers, although they're accurate numbers, they're not looking at the whole picture and looking at the total cost of the project. And that maintenance is going to be borne by the citizens of Westchester. And, you know, as I mentioned last time, our police department's fund is looking at some very serious issues. In 2016, we may be going back to the voters for another levy, and if the voters don't grant us a levy, we may need to consider supporting the police department with money from the general fund. And to me, the police and fire department, the maintaining of our roads is much more important than extending a bike paths. According to the Cincinnati Enquirer, Westchester already has more bike paths than any other community in the Cincinnati area. And I know Mr. Poles made some comments about his frustration with the lack of bike paths, and we may not have one that fits from someone's house to someone's place of business, but according to a recent article in the Cincinnati Enquirer, we have more routes and paths than any other area, any other community in the Cincinnati area. And the residents of Westchester did put together the connection plan. All that is a recommendation. The buck stops with the trustees. It's up to us to decide whether or not to implement the plan, whether to move forward, and whether to allocate assets to the plan. And I cannot support this.
Thank you, Mr. Lane. Incidentally, you said that Cincinnati Enquirer said that there's a quote in there.
No, it wasn't a quote. It was an entire article on bike paths in Cincinnati.
That we have the most bike path in the whole region?
According to their diagram, yeah.
Well, could you send me the source? I really like to read that.
I'll try to find it. It was about 6 months ago in the Cincinnati Enquirer.
Will you send it to...
Probably Google it and find it yourself.
They must have been counting the private paths like Beckett Ridge.
They were showing every single path in every single community. That's exactly what they were doing.
Yeah, because...
And we had more than anybody else.
The vast majority of our paths are not taxpayer created. They're
well, they were looking
created
at
by
the pass on Cox Road, the bike lanes. They were looking at everything that we have as they looked at everything every other community have. And we had more coverage than any other community in the Cincinnati area.
If you find it, could you send it to Ms. Boyko?
Sure, I'll spend, I'm not going to spend more than 5 minutes looking for it. But I'll Google bike paths in Cincinnati Enquirer and see if I can find that.
Thank you.
If I could just offer a response to one of your, and I know you, like I, consider safety to be the most important function that we have here, keeping our community safe, and that means supporting our police, fire department, emergency medical. Traditionally, Westchester, long before I came here, the voters tell us how much they want us to spend. They tell us by voting for either the police levy or for the fire and emergency medical levy. And it's kind of my belief that the voters are expecting us to provide the best possible service they can to us within those funding sources that they give us. On the other hand, for our roads, the only dedicated funding we have for our roads comes from the little bit we get off of gasoline taxes, a little bit we get off of our license plate. When you renew your motor vehicle license plate, it costs you, what, 50 some odd dollars now? $5 of that comes to Westchester. And this is dedicated, must be spent on our roads, must be spent on road maintenance. That's maybe 25%, if that, of what we actually need to spend. The difference comes out of our general fund.
That's right.
To me, the general fund it is absolutely critical that we keep as much of that general fund for this basic infrastructure, our roads, our culverts, our stormwater control, etc.
Yep.
And I would think awfully long and hard before I would divert the funding to augment what the taxpayers say they want us to spend on police or want us to spend on fire. I think it is absolutely essential that those funds be preserved. Now, you and I differ on what we consider to be essential services with respect to transportation, etc. You're looking just at roads. I think that there is a place for hiking and biking paths, alternate transportation within the whole essential services that we provide in the way of transportation. I don't just look at the macadam that the vehicles, that cars, automobiles, and trucks are on. And with respect to saying no to federal funding, that gets to be kind of a problem for us. You might want to talk to the county engineer. It was federal funding that paid for the widening of Tylersville. You know, that nice widening from Wetherington down past Cincinnati-Dayton Road, that was federal funds. The widening of Bypass 4, those are federal funds. It becomes awfully hard to say no because we need good quality roads, well maintained, in order for us to preserve commercial development, residential transportation. I mean, it's just saying no, that's kind of hard to do.
I agree with everything you just said, and I think you're actually supporting my point that our port competency and our other infrastructure are much more important than something that the majority of people are going to use for pleasurable reasons. One other thing you said interesting, though, was about Westchester doesn't end up projects we can't afford, and our unemployment in Westchester is so good. As someone who actually is either a direct owner or investor in Westchester businesses that employ probably over 150 people, I can tell you why businesses come here. They come here because we can make more money, because the cost of government is relatively low compared to other communities, and we come here to increase our profit. No other reason. Westchester isn't better, smarter, faster, quicker than any other community around us, but we can come here and make more money. And what government does as things are going well, and things are going very well in Westchester, is we tend to spend money. We tend to build things that we don't need. Parks that we have. We plant trees and forests that, in my opinion, we don't need. We spend money on things that we don't need, and then all of a sudden, 10 to 12 years down the line, there's the unintended consequences of our infrastructure is so huge now. The cost of government gets so big, and we have to pass that along to the taxpayers. It's what's happened in the city of Cincinnati. It's what happened in Middletown. It's what's happened in Hamilton. It's what's happened in Detroit. We can go on and on with examples of this. When governments are doing well, they spend money, not realizing the unintended consequences that a day of reckoning is coming. And if we want to continue to be a place where employers want to come, where employers want to invest, because it's the employers that make our community a great place, not the government. It's the residents and the people that invest in Westchester. We have to keep the cost of government low so that long-term people will continue to come here.
I don't disagree with anything you say, but I think you probably, like I, saw that article recently in the newspaper remarking about the condition of the roads in the cities of Hamilton and Middletown, where apparently the analyses by those two cities, from them, they say it will take over $300 million, approximately $30 a year for the next 10 years, $30 million a year, for the city of Hamilton and the cities of Middletown to bring their roads up to standard.
Yes.
Westchester hasn't done that. The reason it hasn't done it is we've been scared to death that that would happen to us. This is why we have put aside our Sustainable Infrastructure Fund from our general fund, because we know that it is cost effective to maintain the roads as they should be, rather than ignoring them, doing something else, taking money from those efforts and maybe building, I don't know, a couple dozen soccer fields or whatever, and instead of doing the appropriate periodic maintenance needed. Consequently, the road beds themselves become so severely damaged that now all of a sudden they find themselves in a hole that they're going to have a great deal of difficulty traveling out. We trustees, have been watching these things, I believe. We don't always talk about them. And we have been extremely conscientious and directed our township administrator on a very regular basis. Make sure we are looking ahead to these infrastructure needs, because we must have plans to cover these needs 5 years, 10 years, 20 years out. If we don't, we will not be able to dig out that hole. But when you talk about, sometimes I think that people are thinking, you're saying this is Westchester's in this position. We aren't, because we have been, in our frank and candid manner, we have all worked very hard to ensure Westchester never, as far as we can control it, finds itself in that kind of a situation of poor, foolish, petty, foolish, bound, ridiculous situation that other communities or our federal government find themselves in.
Let me address that. We're not in that position
could I say
yet.
something?
I want to address that direct comment. And
I see
then
audience here is switching legs left and right. Is getting about.
But she brought up some points, though, that we do need to address.
No, let me say something.
Okay, go ahead.
That we are trustee of Westchester. That I'm glad we are not Washington. That we are trying to solve a little problem here in Westchester. It's a complex issue, but this government here is township government. It's the simplest, and I think it is the best form of government. That doesn't say that we don't have room for improvement. Yes, but it's the best we got. So far, it's good. So far that we are in the black. We are doing right. We're doing correctly. That I appreciate all the opinions as stated tonight, but in talks with other residents in the township, they do not agree with you. But all the spending has to be carefully studied. And we study our spending very carefully, discussion after discussion. We cannot act like federal government and be able to do what is best for Westchester residents. I want to say that last week, yes, I went to one of our new business in Westchester. What is that? Frickers. I got to say that I walk in there about 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock sometime in the evening. The place was packed that I couldn't even find a place to sit. And there were lines waiting for 30 to 40 minutes. That was so early in the evening. And the business owner told me that business was great. Westchester Township employees such as fire department, zoning department, work with them, and they are very happy with us. Westchester is a great community. We hear all this gloom and doom about national debt. Yes, we have our congressman. Talk to them at that level. We have John Boehner, our state representative. Agenda 21, that's a United Nations agenda. I don't know how to get into our agenda here. We are flying all over the place. I deal with what is on the ground in Westchester. I do what is best for the people of Westchester. Mr. Lane.
Yeah, I'd like to address a few things that both of you guys have said about Westchester. being strong and about us spending our money carefully. First of all, I would argue that we don't spend our money carefully, and it's evidenced by the 2-to-1 votes. I just disagree with the way you and Kathy want to spend money. I'm not making a judgment statement on it, just saying I would argue against that. But the problem we're going to have isn't today. It's not today. Hamilton, when they started 30 years ago in Middletown, the Stoker brought up the roads. Their problems didn't just happen today. 30 years ago, they were rocking and rolling. The steel industry, the paper industry. And they thought it would go on forever. And they started building swimming pools. They started building bike paths. They started building parks. They added these beautiful Taj Mahals, these buildings, this infrastructure. And then the unintended consequences down the road, when they look back, now they can't even afford to fix their roads because they have so many other things to maintain, things that aren't core competencies and things that they didn't need then and they don't need today. I just want to make sure we can avoid the same path. However, I can count to 2. For us to continue the debate, I don't think would be a good use of our time. And Ms. Boyko, I think you have the feel from the board. I do have
In referencing the discussion item, is it the board's, at least a majority of the board's then, direction to prepare the application and have it presentable for a discussion item, for a business item at your April 9th meeting?
I would like to, at the very least, find out if the property owners, and that would require us going forward, are interested there in having a bike path, connecting the other bike paths in their property. And I think to do that, we would have to ask you to move forward and get some more additional information.
Well, and that was something that you mentioned at the last discussion.
Yeah.
This is the second time that this has been discussed by the board. First at your March 12th and now at your March 26th meeting. And when it was presented at your first meeting, that is something that you spoke to. So staff did take the liberty of contacting the affected property owners, namely, although nothing would be constructed on the multifamily developments to the south, we did contact those 3 multifamily developments. We contacted the Beckett Ridge HOA. We contacted the church, and then Regency Centers along for the management company of the Kroger's, the Beckett Center. We did not contact the McDonald's and the Sibsey Klein, which is on the west side of 747. And just to be very clear, is that the presentation to those property owners I just mentioned was verbal. It was by phone. Not a lot of details were granted or given, just that the board is considering this, and is there any objection on their part, with the understanding that the township would potentially pursue the grant and then have subsequent meetings with those property owners to present to them more detailed construction drawings and designs. And again, from the verbal discussions that I had with one and Mr. Yingling had with the others, that they would not object to the application, with the understanding that once detailed drawings are presented to them, that objection that they may object.
Yeah, right. The other concern I had, and this is just sort of an attitude on my part, I guess, and that is communities have been building sidewalks for the convenience of not just residents but also for commerce for over 5,000 years, literally. Long before any United Nations or Agenda 21, sidewalks are going to be built in cities and communities around the world for thousands of years after UN and Agenda 21 have eliminated. Just because, from my perspective, this organization out there someplace mentioned sidewalks does not mean that organization has anything to do with Westchester or what we're doing. As far as I'm concerned, speaking as one trustee, I could care less what this so-called Agenda 21 says. I'm just here to do my best job as a trustee. And I mean, I would know more. If Agenda 21 mentions sidewalks, to me that's immaterial any more than because, say, Hitler had submarines and bombers. Would that mean that our defense agencies would not have submarines and bombers because, oh my God, Hitler had some? No. It's a sidewalk. I don't see this as an international plot to take over America. We're just considering a sidewalk. Maybe it's a good idea, maybe it isn't, but it's just a sidewalk.
That's exactly what the Agenda 21 website said pro-Agenda 21 people say. No, I'm just kidding. No kidding. Just kidding.
Go ahead, I'll meet you in the sidewalk. Yeah,
you guys
we'll
are
see.
flying all over the outer space. Let's get down to the ground level. What is right for the people of Westchester, I will follow. I would do that. Do the right thing. Sidewalk.
We may not always agree, but
yeah. That's right. This is America. We have pros and cons all the time. Hey, do what the majority wants, and that sidewalk, iPad is a part of an infrastructure. That that is a little part, just a short distance. It's an important link for for a lot of people that. For township use.
On the other hand, that doesn't mean that we intend to build sidewalks all over the place.
That's
we
right.
backed away from the Dimmick Road one. People didn't want it there.
It's a small grant to build this little project. Where is this idea came from that we are building sidewalk all over township? That's kind of blown out of proportion.
It all starts
it's just
somewhere.
a short.
And if we do what the majority wants, as Mr. Wong recommends, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. We are not elected to do what the majority wants. This is not a democracy, it's a republic. And the people represent us for our views and our perspectives. We do not, this is not about what the majority wants. And I believe the majority of people in Westchester would put police and fire above this bike path. That's my opinion.